I was raised to believe that success comes from working hard and making smart decisions. My name is Harrison, 34 years old, and the founder of a software company I built from the ground up. When I met Stephanie at a charity event, I thought I had found my perfect match. We fell in love quickly, and I believed we would spend our lives together. My parents had a bitter divorce, so I was always cautious about financial matters. I never expected a simple prenuptial agreement would reveal the truth about the woman I loved. If you have ever had to make a difficult choice between your head and heart, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like button as I share how one piece of paper nearly destroyed everything I held dear. Growing up in Portland, my life was pretty typical for a middle-class family. Mom worked as a high school English teacher, and Dad had his own accounting firm. They gave me and my younger sister everything we needed, including a stable home where we felt safe and loved. That all changed when I turned 15. I still remember the night everything fell apart. Loud voices coming from downstairs woke me up. My parents were fighting about money again, but this time it was different. The next morning, Dad was gone. No goodbye, no explanation. Just an empty closet and a confused family. The divorce was ugly. My father had been hiding assets for years, preparing for the day he would leave. He had a secret bank account investments my mom never knew about, and even a small vacation property in her name that she was unaware of. When everything was said and done, my mother was left struggling to pay the mortgage while raising 2 teenagers on a teacher's salary. Harrison, always protect yourself. My mother told me one night after working a double shift at her second job. Love is beautiful, but never let it blind you to reality. Those words stuck with me. I promised myself I would always be financially responsible and transparent. I would never end up like my father, sneaking around behind the scenes. And I would never be like my mother, either left devastated by financial deception. In college, I worked multiple jobs to avoid taking on debt. While my friends partied, I built websites for local businesses. During my junior year, I developed a scheduling software program as a project for my computer science class. What started as homework turned into something bigger when small businesses began asking to use it. By senior year, I was running my software company from my dorm room. After graduation, I took the risk and focused on it full time. 10 years later, I had 28 employees and a company valued in the millions. Everything I had, I built myself through countless sleepless nights and sacrifices that my peers were unwilling to make. I met Stephanie at a tech charity event for underprivileged youth. My company was donating software to help kids learn coding. She was there representing her art therapy center for children dealing with trauma. I noticed her immediately, not just because she was beautiful with her warm brown eyes and dimpled smile, but because of how the children flocked to her. She had this natural ability to connect with people that I had always lacked. "The kids seem to love you," I said, approaching her after she finished a demonstration. "Art gives them a voice when words fail," she replied, her eyes lighting up. "Sometimes the most important stories are the hardest to tell." We talked for the rest of the event. She was passionate about helping children heal through creative expression. Her approach to life was so different from mine. Where I saw systems and solutions, she saw emotions and possibilities. It was refreshing. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. We talked until the owner politely informed us they needed to close. Stephanie was warm, funny, and genuinely interested in everything about my life. She asked questions about my business that went beyond polite conversation. She wanted to know why I started it, what motivated me, what my dreams were. "You need more balance in your life," she told me on our third date. "All work and no play makes Harrison a very boring boy." She laughed, but I knew she was right. With Stephanie, I discovered parts of myself I had forgotten existed. She dragged me to art exhibitions, jazz festivals, and spontaneous road trips to the coast. She taught me to appreciate beauty in unexpected places. Her creativity and warmth melted the guard I had kept around my heart since watching my parents' marriage crumble. We dated for 18 months before moving in together. During that time, Stephanie proved herself to be more than just the fun, creative person I first met. She was also incredibly supportive and strong. 6 months into our relationship, I nearly lost a major client that would have devastated my business. I was stressed, irritable, and completely focused on fixing the problem. Stephanie never complained. Instead, she brought dinner to my office, massaged my shoulders while I worked late into the night, and reminded me that whatever happened, we would face it together. "Your business is important, but it does not define you," she said. "Remember that. We balanced each other perfectly. My practical nature kept her grounded when her artistic dreams seemed impossible. Her creative spirit prevented me from becoming a workaholic who forgot to enjoy life. We shared the same core values: honesty, hard work, and the desire to help others. We talked about the future: marriage, a home with enough space for both a home office and an art studio, maybe even children someday. I proposed at the same charity event, where we first met exactly 1 year later. I had arranged for us to have a private moment in the garden, surrounded by lights and her favorite flowers. When I got down on one knee, her eyes filled with tears. "Yes, a million times yes," she exclaimed, before I even finished asking the question. She threw her arms around me, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. We immediately began planning our wedding. Stephanie had dreamed of her wedding day since she was a little girl, and I wanted to give her everything she desired. I found myself increasingly invested in her art therapy center too, helping her write grant proposals and update the technology they used. I wanted her dreams to succeed as much as my own. We booked an exclusive venue with breathtaking ocean views for our wedding. The cost was astronomical, but Stephanie fell in love with it the moment we visited. The joy on her face when we put down the deposit made every penny worthwhile. "Can you believe this will be where we start our forever?" she asked, spinning around in the empty ballroom. Her excitement was contagious. We planned to invite 150 guests, friends and family from across the country. Her parents, Thomas and Margaret, were thrilled about the wedding. Thomas was a business owner himself, running a construction company that had been successful for many years. He and Margaret offered to contribute a significant amount to the wedding costs, which I initially declined, but eventually accepted when I saw how important it was to Stephanie that her parents be involved. Shopping for rings together became one of my favorite memories. The way Stephanie's eyes lit up when she found the perfect engagement ring, a vintage-style platinum band with a center diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires, made me certain I had found the person I wanted to spend my life with. Despite my happiness, there was still a small voice in the back of my mind. The voice that remembered my mother's tears when she discovered my father's deception. The voice that reminded me of the promise I made to always be financially responsible and transparent. I mentioned the idea of a prenuptial agreement to my business partner and best friend James during a meeting. "You would be an idiot not to get one," he said bluntly. "You have employees who depend on you. You have built something valuable. Protecting it is not about distrusting Stephanie. It is about being responsible." His words made sense, but I still felt uneasy about bringing it up with Stephanie. I pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on our future together. But as the wedding planning progressed, the nagging feeling only grew stronger. 3 months before our wedding date, I scheduled a meeting with Alan, my company's lawyer. I had been putting off this conversation, but time was running short. "A prenuptial agreement is standard for someone in your position," Alan assured me. "It protects not just your personal assets, but the business you have built and the people who work for you." He explained that without a prenup, my business could potentially be considered marital property in a divorce depending on how its value changed during the marriage. This could affect my employees, my clients, and everything I had worked for. "This is not about planning for failure," Alan said. "Think of it like business insurance. You do not buy fire insurance because you expect your office to burn down. You buy it because you are being responsible." I spent days wrestling with how to bring up the subject with Stephanie. I wanted to be honest without making her feel like I was expecting our marriage to fail. Finally, I decided on a quiet evening at home after a nice dinner I had cooked myself. "I need to talk to you about something important." I began, my heart racing. "It is about protecting what we are both bringing into this marriage." I carefully explained my reasoning, my responsibility to my employees, the lessons from my parents' divorce, my belief in being transparent about financial matters. I emphasized that this was not about lack of trust, but about being practical and responsible. A prenup would outline what happens to my business in the unlikely event that our marriage ends. "It would also protect your art therapy center and anything else you build," I explained. "It is like insurance, something you hope you will never need, but should have, just in case." Stephanie sat quietly as I spoke, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she simply nodded and said she needed time to think about it. The silence that followed felt heavy, unsettling. I sensed that something had shifted between us, but I could not yet identify what it was. The days following our prenup conversation were tense. Stephanie became distant, often going to bed early, or finding reasons to stay late at her art center. When she was home, the easy conversation we once shared was replaced by uncomfortable silence. After nearly a week of this treatment, I finally confronted her. "Please talk to me. What are you thinking?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Do you really need to ask? You say you want to marry me, but you are already planning for our divorce." "That is not what this is about," I insisted. "This is about being responsible and transparent." "No, this is about you not trusting me," she shot back. "My friends were right. Prenups are insulting. They say, 'I love you, but only up to a point.' Is that how you feel about me?" I tried to explain again that this was not about trust, but about responsible business ownership. I told her about my mother's suffering, about my responsibility to my employees. Nothing seemed to get through. The tension followed us to a family dinner at her parents' home that weekend. Throughout the evening, Stephanie made subtle jabs about my trust issues and preparing for failure. "Harrison is very cautious," she told her parents with a forced laugh. "He wants to make sure everything is protected in case I turn out to be a gold digger." Thomas, her father, frowned at this. "What exactly are you talking about?" Before I could intervene, Stephanie explained about the prenup. The atmosphere in the room instantly changed. Margaret looked uncomfortable while Thomas's face hardened. "In my day," he said sternly, "when a man proposed to a woman, it meant he was all in. No holding back, no escape plans." I left the dinner feeling confused and hurt. Stephanie was pulling away emotionally, and I did not know how to bridge the growing gap between us. Over the next few weeks, the tension escalated. Stephanie began canceling wedding planning appointments without telling me. When I asked her about it, she would shrug and say, "What is the point if you are already planning for this to fail?" Her parents started calling to check in more frequently than usual. These conversations always seemed to circle back to the prenup issue with subtle pressure from Thomas about doing the right thing and showing proper commitment. Meanwhile, James warned me not to cave. "The fact that they are pressuring you this hard is exactly why you need the protection," he insisted. "Something does not feel right about this." One night after Stephanie canceled yet another appointment with our wedding planner, I confronted her in the kitchen. What started as a calm discussion quickly escalated. "Why can you not just trust me?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Is your precious business more important than our relationship?" "This is not about choosing one over the other," I argued. "It is about being responsible and transparent. Why are you so against something that just puts everything in writing? Because it means you are already thinking about leaving me." "No, it means I am thinking about protecting everything we both have worked for." The argument went in circles, until finally Stephanie issued an ultimatum. "Choose Harrison. The prenup or me. You cannot have both." I stood there, stunned by her words. This was not the woman I thought. I knew the understanding partner, who had supported me through difficult times. Something had changed, and I could not shake the feeling that there was more to this situation than I understood. After days of tense silence, we agreed to meet with both sets of parents and Alan, my lawyer, to discuss the prenup situation. I hoped that having a professional explain the standard nature of such agreements might help Stephanie understand my position. We gathered in a private room at an upscale restaurant downtown. Alan began by explaining that prenuptial agreements were common protective measures, not indications of distrust or anticipated failure. "Many couples view these as financial transparency documents," Alan explained. "They actually prevent misunderstandings later by making everything clear from the beginning." Before he could continue, Thomas interrupted. "Let me be frank here. I find this whole thing offensive. My daughter is not some gold digger you need protection from." "No one is suggesting that, Mr. Davis," Allen replied calmly. "Then why the paperwork? Why the legal barriers?" Thomas's face was reddening. "In my 40 years of marriage, we never needed lawyers to tell us how to trust each other." The conversation grew increasingly heated. Thomas became more aggressive, suggesting that I obviously did not love Stephanie enough if I needed legal protection from her. Throughout this exchange, I noticed something odd. Thomas seemed too invested, too angry about something that ultimately was between Stephanie and me. His reaction seemed disproportionate, almost desperate. Finally, Stephanie broke down in tears. "It is an insult to what we have," she said, looking at me with hurt in her eyes. "It is saying you do not believe in us." "I understand," I replied quietly, studying her face and her father's reaction. Everyone at the table seemed to relax, assuming my words meant I was giving in. But that was not what I meant at all. I understood something else entirely. As the meeting continued, my phone buzzed with a text from James, "Call me as soon as possible. Important info about Thomas." I excused myself to use the restroom and called James from a quiet corner of the restaurant. "Harrison Thomas has been asking around about your company's valuation," James said without preamble. "One of our investors played golf with him last weekend. Thomas was fishing for details about your financial situation, asking very specific questions about how your business ownership is structured." A cold realization washed over me. My concerns had not been paranoia or trust issues. They had been justified. When I returned to the table, I saw everything in a new light. The pressure, the emotional manipulation, Stephanie's sudden change of heart about the prenup after discussing it with her father. It all made sense now. I quietly left the meeting while everyone was still arguing. No one seemed to notice my departure, which told me everything I needed to know about the real priorities in that room. Back at my apartment, I spent hours researching Thomas's construction company. What I discovered confirmed my suspicions. His business was in serious financial trouble. There were liens against his property lawsuits from unpaid subcontractors and signs that he was nearing bankruptcy. Thomas did not see our marriage as the union of his daughter with the man she loved. He saw it as financial salvation. Without a prenup, he could potentially access my resources through Stephanie if his business completely failed. Had Stephanie known? Was she complicit in her father's plans? Or was she an unwitting pawn? Either way, the trust between us was broken. Someone who truly loved me would not issue ultimatums or use emotional manipulation to gain access to what I had built. After hours of soul-searching, I made the most painful decision of my life. At 3 a.m, I sent an email to our wedding venue, canceling our reservation, and authorizing them to keep the full payment as compensation for the late notice. Then I crafted a carefully worded social media post. "It is with deep regret that I announce the cancellation of my wedding to Stephanie Davis. Sometimes, despite our best intentions, we discover fundamental incompatibilities that cannot be reconciled. I ask for privacy during this difficult time, and wish Stephanie nothing but the best for her future." I clicked post and put my phone on silent. Then I packed an overnight bag and booked a hotel room. I knew what would happen next, and I needed space to weather the storm. My phone exploded with notifications within minutes of my post. Friends, family, and even acquaintances were messaging to ask what happened. Stephanie called repeatedly, but I let each call go to voicemail. I needed time to process my emotions before speaking with her. At the hotel, I turned off my phone completely and sat in silence, trying to make sense of the turmoil inside me. I felt grief for the future I had imagined with Stephanie. I felt anger at being manipulated. Most of all, I felt a strange sense of emptiness, as if something vital had been hollowed out of me. When I finally checked my messages the next morning, there was one from my mother that stood out from all the others. I recognized the pattern, "Son. You did what you had to do. I am proud of you for having the courage I lacked. Call me when you are ready." Her understanding meant more to me than she could know. She had seen the signs because she had lived through a similar deception. Around noon, there was a knock at my hotel room door. It was James holding a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. "Figured you could use this," he said simply. We sat in silence for a long time, the whiskey burning a path down my throat. James did not ask for explanations or offer empty platitudes. He just provided the quiet companionship of someone who understood that some pain cannot be fixed with words. "You did the right thing," he said, finally. "It would have been much worse later." I nodded, knowing he was right, but finding no comfort in it. Doing the right thing had never felt so devastating. The next morning, there was another knock at my hotel door. When I opened it, I found Thomas standing there. He looked disheveled with dark circles under his eyes and wrinkled clothes that suggested he had not been home. "We need to talk," he said, his voice lacking the authoritative tone I was accustomed to hearing from him. I considered shutting the door in his face, but decided against it. 5 minutes, I said, stepping aside to let him enter. Thomas began with anger, accusing me of humiliating his daughter with my public post and questioning my manhood for not discussing the decision with him first. I let him vent, without interruption. Then something unexpected happened. His anger crumbled, and the proud, confident businessman I had known was replaced by a desperate, broken man. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "My business is failing," he confessed. Everything I built over 30 years is collapsing. The bank is foreclosing on our home next month. I have nowhere to turn. So you turned to me, I said quietly. Or rather to my relationship with your daughter. He did not deny it. I thought if you two married without a prenup, maybe you could help save what I built. Is that so terrible? To want to protect my legacy, my family. The terrible part was using your daughter's happiness as a financial strategy. I replied, struggling to control my anger, and not being honest about your intentions. Thomas looked up, his eyes wet with tears. I was desperate. I still am. But you are right, and I am sorry. Stephanie did not know. Not at first. I convinced her the prenup meant you did not truly love her. I played on her insecurities. His confession confirmed what I had suspected but hoped was not true. Thomas had manipulated his own daughter, using her love for me as a tool to solve his financial problems. I cannot fix this with Stephanie, can I? He asked. No, I replied. Some trust once broken cannot be repaired. Before he left, Thomas asked if I would consider helping him with his business troubles separate from the marriage issues. The fact that he was still trying to access my resources, even after his confession, told me everything I needed to know about his character. A week after canceling the wedding, I agreed to meet Stephanie at a neutral coffee shop. I needed closure, and despite everything, I owed her the chance to speak her piece. She arrived looking like she had not slept in days. Her initial anger was palpable as she sat across from me. How could you humiliate me like that? A social media post. Really, I let her vent her frustration before responding. Your father came to see me, I said simply. Her expression changed immediately. What did he tell you? The truth. Finally. The anger in her eyes gave way to shame. She looked down at her coffee cup, unable to meet my gaze. I did not know at first, she said softly. When you mentioned the prenup, I genuinely felt hurt, like you did not trust me. But then, Dad started suggesting that my insistence on a prenup meant I did not really love you. She nodded. He was so convincing. He said if you truly loved me, you would not need legal protection from me. Then, a few weeks ago, he told me about his financial troubles, how he might lose everything. He suggested that without a prenup, we could help him after we were married. And you went along with it, I said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I felt caught between the two men I love most. I convinced myself it was not wrong, because eventually I would have told you about Dad's situation after we were married. But you chose not to be honest with me before making a lifetime commitment, I replied. That is what this was really about, Stephanie. Not the prenup itself, but the honesty and trust it represented. We talked for over an hour. There were tears on both sides as we acknowledged that something fundamental had been broken between us. The woman I had fallen in love with was still there, but the trust that had been the foundation of our relationship was shattered beyond repair. Before we parted, she returned her engagement ring. I am sorry, she whispered. For everything. So am I replied, meaning it with all my heart. In the months that followed, I immersed myself in work as a form of therapy. The pain did not disappear, but having a purpose helped me move forward one day at a time. I created a foundation to help children of divorce understand financial literacy and healthy relationship boundaries. The irony was not lost on me that my own painful experience had led to something that might help others avoid similar situations. My relationship with my mother grew stronger as we connected over our shared experiences. She had always been a strong woman, but seeing her son stand up for himself in a way she had not been able to seemed to heal something in her as well. I started seeing a therapist to process my grief and examine my own relationship patterns. Was I too guarded? Had my parents' divorce made me overly cautious? These were important questions I needed to answer before I could consider opening my heart again. Thomas reached out several times asking to discuss a business partnership. I declined, but recommended other investors who might be interested in helping him restructure his company. Despite everything, I did not wish financial ruin on him or his family. The hardest part was letting go of the future I had imagined with Stephanie. The house we had planned to buy, the children we might have had, the life we would have built together, all these dreams had to be mourned and released. Yet with time I found peace in my decision. The pain was evidence that what we had was real, at least for a time. But sometimes love is not enough when fundamental values like honesty and trust are compromised. 6 months after canceling the wedding, I sponsored an art therapy program for children affected by divorce. It was a cause Stephanie had been passionate about, and continuing to support it felt like honoring the good parts of what we had shared. At the program's opening event, Stephanie and I encountered each other briefly. The meeting was civil, even warm in a distant way. We exchanged polite conversation before moving to opposite sides of the room. Later, I learned she had started her own art therapy practice with funding from a local arts organization. She had not taken the easy path of relying on her father or finding another relationship to solve her problems. Instead, she had found her own way forward, and I felt genuine pride in her for that. The experience changed my perspective on relationships. I learned that honesty must always come before comfort, that difficult conversations are essential, not optional. I discovered that while trust is fragile, self-respect is resilient. I also learned to trust my instincts. The uneasiness I had felt about the prenup situation had been my subconscious, recognizing what my conscious mind had missed. Those instincts had saved me from a marriage that would have been built on a foundation of deception. Yet despite everything, I remained open to the possibility of love. My experience had not made me cynical, just wiser. I knew that the right relationship would be one where financial transparency was valued, not avoided, where difficult conversations strengthened rather than threatened the bond. Most importantly, I found meaning by helping others navigate the complex intersection of love and money. By sharing my story and creating resources for others, the pain I experienced became purposeful rather than merely painful. 1 year after what should have been my wedding day, both my business and my personal life were thriving. The company continued to grow, and I had found a new sense of purpose through my foundation work. The pain had not disappeared entirely, I doubted it ever would, but it had transformed into something manageable, even valuable. I was grateful for the painful lesson that prevented a far worse outcome. Had I discovered the truth years into our marriage, perhaps with children involved, the damage would have been immeasurably greater. I learned that love requires both heart and head working together. Emotions matter, but so does practical wisdom. True partnerships are built on mutual respect, honesty, and shared values, not just passionate feelings or common interests. I have no regrets about my decision despite its cost. Standing for your principles may break your heart, but compromising them breaks something even more important: your relationship with yourself. Have you ever had to choose between what feels good and what you know is right? How did you handle that situation, and what did you learn from it? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. And if you know someone who might benefit from this lesson, share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest growth. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video.